Hello everyone, welcome back to MalStorm Gaming. My name is Malachi Gardner and today I'm going to be beginning my playthrough of the Lord of the Rings card game by Fantasy Flight Games. I hope you all enjoy the video. So, I have Lord of the Rings pretty much all set up here, just a couple more things I need to do, but I will walk through that with you all. So I have my deck right over here, so it is made up of 50 cards that I chose, and they're all in this deck, it's all shuffled up, ready to go. And then I also have 3 heroes. When building your deck, you're going to be able to choose up to 3 different heroes to use. And so for this deck, I have Sam, Merry, and Frodo. And they are going to be going through and trying to complete a scenario, which in this case is going to be the Road to Rivendell scenario. So this particular scenario has 3 different quest cards that are double-sided, and we're going to need to progress through these 3 quest cards in order to win the game. Each quest card is going to have a number of these progress tokens that we need to place on the card in order to complete this quest. So for this one right here, we need 20. After we get 20 progress tokens on this card, we can then go on to the second one and then the third one. And generally after you place enough progress tokens on the final quest card, you will win the scenario. Certain scenarios are different. The game scenarios vary wildly, but for this scenario we're just going to need to be placing progress tokens on these 3 quest cards, and if we can get through all 3 of them, we win the game. There's some special setup instructions on the card that I'll read in just a little bit, and that'll finalize our setup. But then there's also this deck of encounter cards. The deck's composition is determined by the symbols listed here. So these symbols all have names, although I can't remember all of them, but we have this little goblin symbol right here, this Misty Mountain symbol, and then the Road to Rivendell scenario symbol. And all the encounter cards with those 3 symbols are going to be shuffled into this deck in order to create the scenario's encounter deck. So that's going to be how you build out the deck there. So that's just a very brief overview on the victory conditions of the game, but let's just go ahead and finalize the setup, and then I'll go in and explain all the rules as I play through the first turn. So there's 2 more things that we need to do to finalize the setup. The first thing is draw our starting hand. So we're going to draw the top 6 cards off of our deck here, and then we can look at it, and we can take a mulligan. So if we don't want to keep this hand, what we can do is we can shuffle these 6 cards back into our starting deck and then draw another hand of 6. Although, you must keep the second hand. So, let me just look through this hand right here. I think this is a pretty good hand, so I think I'm going to keep this one. But if I didn't like this hand, I could shuffle these cards back into the deck and draw a new hand of 6 cards in hopes of getting a better hand that works. And hopefully getting a hand that works better as a starting point. So then, with that out of the way, the last thing we're going to need to do is follow the setup instructions on this quest card. Now there's also some flavor text that I'm going to go ahead and read. Your party has braved the snows of the pass, but now you must travel north along the Misty Mountains for league upon league as you escort Arwen to her father's house. Alright, so then the setup is put Arwen. So then for following the setup instructions, we're going to need to place the Arwen ally card, which is a scenario-specific ally that we're going to have. We can't add her to any deck, but when we're playing with this scenario, the first player is going to gain control of her, so we'll have an extra starting card in the game, and then we're going to shuffle the encounter deck, which I've already done, and then reveal 1 card from the encounter deck per player and put them in the staging area. Okay, so drew a card from the top of the encounter deck. I'm going to flip this over and look at what it is. So, this is a wild bear, and this is an enemy card as denoted right there. There's a whole bunch of stats here, and I will explain what all these mean when they become relevant, but for now, I'm just going to ignore those and check for any abilities that are applied when I draw this card from the encounter deck. And there actually is one right here. It says Ambush. After this enemy enters play, each player makes an engagement check against it. So what that means is we're going to check this number right here. This is the engagement cost. And as you can see, it's 34. We are going to compare that number to our threat, which is going to be listed on this dial. Now, we start with 21 threat. And the way I determined that we started with 21 threat is by looking at our 3 hero cards. They each have a threat cost listed there, and adding all 3 of those costs together will give us our starting threat. So Sam costs 8, Merry costs 6 and Frodo costs 7, so we're going to start 21 threat. Now our threat is going to impact different things throughout the game, and it's going to be going up as we progress through the game. One thing it's going to determine is which enemies attack us, and the second thing is it's a timer, because if we ever have 50 threat, we lose the game. So, we're at 21, which is, well, ways up from 50, which is good, but we have this wild bear who is trying to ambush us, and so we're going to check to see if our threat is equal to or greater than the enemy's engagement cost. If it is, he's going to engage us, which means he's going to be actively fighting us. If it is not, if our threat is lower than his engagement cost of 34, then he's just going to be in the staging area, and he's not going to be fighting us right now, but he is going to be adding some, but he's going to be making things a little bit more difficult for us as we play through the game, until we actually face him. So, as we can see, our starting threat is 20, as we can see, our threat is 21, and his engagement cost is 34, so he's not going to be able to ambush us. Instead, he's just going to be placed in the staging area, and he may end up making things a little bit more difficult for us later on. So then, after resolving all of that set of instructions, we're just going to flip over this card, and we have more flavor text here. This is a wild and perilous country, and it is dangerous to follow the roads. The mountains rise up on the right, impassively watching your slow trek along the foothills. Okay, so we see here that we need 20 progress tokens in order to complete this quest, and then we can move on to the second stage. So just set this up here. This quest card has no special rules or anything like that, which is pretty nice. So we can just keep it here as a reminder that we need 20 progress tokens in order to go on to the next quest card. So now we're all ready to start off the first round. On the back of the rulebook here, we have a chart showing the round overview, and this game has 7 phases, which seems like a lot, but really once you get used to it, it's really not that bad, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So first we have the resource phase. And so first thing we're going to do is gain resources. So the resource phase is actually a really fun part of the game because, as the name implies, we're going to be getting more resources. So first, we're going to gain resources. We have our 3 heroes here, and the biggest thing that makes heroes so great is that they are going to be able to generate resources. At the beginning of each round, during the resource phase, each hero is going to gain 1 of these little resource tokens. And these are what we're going to be using to play cards from our hand. Each card has a cost, which is listed right up here, and we're going to need to pay resources equal to that cost with a matching sphere symbol. So there are 4 different spheres in the game. There's the red tactics sphere, there's the purple leadership sphere, the blue spirit sphere, and then I don't have any cards of the 4th type in the game, but is the green lore sphere. Each hero has a sphere listed here, and so each one of the resources in that hero's resource pool is going to be a resource of that color. All of the resources in Frodo's resource pool are going to be blue resources, whereas all of Merry's resources are going to be red and can you can use them to pay for red cards. And then likewise, Sam is going to be purple. There are certain cards, such as this Gandalf card right here, which has no sphere, which means that any hero from any sphere can contribute resources to pay for its cost. Can contribute resources to pay for the card's cost, which is really great because Gandalf is very expensive. Now, the next thing we have to do during the resource phase is draw a card. This is very simple. We're going to draw a card from our deck and add it to our hand. It's another test of will. That's actually going to be very helpful. Now we're going to go into the second phase, and it's going to be the planning phase. Now during this phase, we're going to be able to play allies, such as Gandalf, and these are going to be essentially weaker, and these are going to be different characters who are going to be able to help us on our quests. We're also going to be able to play attachments, such as this Hobbit cloak, and attachments are all items and upgrades you can play that you can give to different characters, such as allies or heroes, to make them more powerful and give them more tools to survive and do well. And then events are one-off abilities we're going to be able to play from our hand. They're going to do a cool thing, and then they're going to be placed in our disc. So during this phase, we can play as many cards as we want from our hand as long as we can pay for them. And so right now we have 1 resource of each of the 3 colors of my deck, so I really can't do that much. So these 4 cards right here are events that aren't actually going to be pertained to the playing phase. The Test of Will, which is these 2 cards right here, is going to allow me to avoid some nasty effects. This card right here will allow me to block attacks, and then this one will allowing me to get more powerful in order to do an attack. These are going to be really helpful, but not entirely useful right now. To start off, I think I'm going to play this Hobbit Cloak. This is going to cost me 1 purple resource, so I'll take 1 resource from Sam's pool and put this away, and then I can play this card. And it says, attached to a Hobbit hero, limit 1 per hero. Now each of my 3 heroes here have Hobbit listed right here, which means that they are all Hobbits, so they each have the Hobbit trait, which means that I'm able to give this card to anyone of my heroes. And it says attached hero gets +2 to the shield symbol, which means defense, while defending against an attack made by an enemy with an engagement cost higher than your threat. So I've already talked about engagement costs and threats, and so essentially if I were to attack this bear, since his engagement cost is higher than my threat, I would get some extra defense against his attacks, which is really nice. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give this Hobbit Cloak to Sam. So now whenever he defends an attack against someone who with engagement cost higher than my threat, he's going to get +2 defense, which will be really nice. And then I don't think I'm going to be playing any more cards. So I'm just going to set this aside and move on to the next phase. Alright, so next up we have the quest phase. So this one has 3 steps. First, we're going to commit characters, then we're going to stage, and then we're going to do quest resolution. So when I commit a character, you are going to exhaust it, which means you're going to turn it 90 degrees, and you're really not able to do much else with a character after it's exhausted. But when you do exhaust a character during the quest phase, you are going to add its willpower, which is this top stat right here, to the quest. So willpower is going to be the main way that we are going to be placing these progress tokens on our quests and on different locations and various cards. So in order to get these quest tokens, we need to exhaust characters during the quest phase so that they can commit their willpower to the quest, and then we can place these tokens. We're going to exhaust the characters we want to commit to the quest. We're going to total up their willpower, and then we're going to have to play another card from the villain deck. Then we're going to look at the threat value on all the enemy cards in the staging area. Right now there's only 1 enemy card inside the staging area, and his threat value is 0, which is actually really nice, but we don't actually know what the next card is going to be. Maybe the threat value will be 3. Then we're going to compare the enemy's threat strength and our hero's willpower. If our willpower is higher than their threat, we're going to be placing progress tokens on the quest equal to the difference. So, questing with a lot of characters is going to be the primary way of how we're going to win, but you can often get into situations where if you quest with a lot of heroes, then you won't be able to do other things like attack and defend against enemy attacks. Now, I think I am actually going to go ahead and quest with all of these characters, and I think that this will be fine in the situation. This could go badly, but I think it will go well, but I think it will be good, and Sam has a special ability that will actually be able to get me out of a pinch if something bad does happen. Alright, so we can total up our willpower, and it's going to be 1, 2 from Arwen, 2 from Frodo, 2 from Mary, and then 3 from Sam. So that's going to be a total of 9 willpower. And then, real quick, Arwen has a special responsibility. Responsibilities are always triggered in response to something else happening, and they are optional. So, this response is after Arwen, exhaust, choose a hero. Add 1 resource to that hero's resource pool. So whenever we exhaust Arwen, we can take 1 resource and give it to any hero. So that's going to be really nice. So I would like to be able to play this card right here, so I'm going to go ahead and give that extra resource to Frodo. So now he has 2 resources in his pool, and so now he's that much closer to being able to play that card. So now we have committed all our characters, and we're going to go to the staging phase. So in this phase, we're going to draw 1 card per player, which in this case is just going to be 1. We're going to draw 1 card from the encounter deck here, and we're going to resolve it. So let's go ahead and see what this is. And it is a Goblin Taskmaster. So this is another enemy. So this enemy also has Ambush. This is a effect that's very prevalent throughout this scenario. And so we're going to go ahead and check our threat value, which is still 21, and compare it to his engagement cost, which is 27. Since our threat is well below 27, he's just going to go to the staging area, and he's not actually going to attack us, which is good because he has a forced ability right here. Now, forced abilities are very similar to responsibilities in that they are triggered when another event happens in the game, but unlike responsibilities, forced abilities are forced upon you, and it's required that you must do it. So They're like responsibilities, except generally not so great. So this says, after Goblin Taskmasters engages a player, that player deals 2 damage to one character he controls. So when so this guy attacks us, he gets to make a quick attack against us, and we can't even like block against his attack or anything like that. And that's not great, especially considering that each of our characters' health is printed right here, and these hobbits really aren't entirely that tough. Sam has 3 health, Merry, Frodo, and Arwen all have 2. So if this character does engage us, then that's going to be 2 damage, which might be 2 damage out of that character's 2 health. Now, luckily, Frodo does have a special ability here that will allow us to avoid that in the future. Just going to read it real quick. We're not actually going to have to use it right now, but it says, response, after Frodo Baggins is damaged, cancel the damage and instead raise your threat by the amount of damage he would have been dealt. Limit once per phase. So instead of taking damage, Frodo can increase our threat, and that would help keep Frodo alive. So that's kind of dangerous to use, but it will account for our characters not having much health. So now the staging phase is all complete, and then we're going to go to the quest resolution phase. So now we are going to count up our willpower, which is going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 willpower, against the enemy's threat. The wild bear has 0, and then the goblin taskmaster has 2, so it's going to be a total of 2. The difference there is 7 in our favor, which means we're going to be able to take 7 progress tokens and place it on the quest card. All right, just going to grab those real quick. Okay, so now we have our 7 progress tokens. I'm going to place it on the quest card. And actually, I'm going to place it just above the quest card. All right, then I'm going to place these all on the quest card here. So now we have 7 of our 20 progress tokens on that quest card. So we're over a third of the way there, and I think that was a pretty good quest phase. Next up, we're going to have our travel phase. So the travel phase is when you are able to travel to any location inside the staging area. In addition to enemies, there are also going to be treacheries and locations coming out of the encounter deck. Treacheries are very similar to our events in that they're just one-time abilities, they do something horrible to us, and then they're just placed in the discard pile. We don't have to worry about them again. Locations are essentially miniature quests. So when a location comes out, it's going to be adding more threat to the enemy's total threat pool inside the staging area, and it's going to be just that much more willpower that we need to overcome in order to place progress tokens. But during the travel phase, we can take one location from the staging area and place it right here, and then we will be traveling to that location and dealing with whatever problems is at that location. And I'll show you when it comes up, but they're going to have a quest value, which is going to be the amount of progress tokens we need to place on location to clear it, and then it'll go into the discard pile. So very similar to just miniature quests that we're going to have to deal with, but we don't have any of those in the staging area right now, so we can just skip that and go on to the encounter phase. So the encounter phase is when the enemies are going to attack us. So first we have optional engagements, and then we have engagement checks. So during the optional engagement phase, each player in clockwise order, starting with the first player, which is the player with the first person token, and which is the player with the first player token, which I actually don't have out here because it's not necessary in the solo game, because you're always the first player. But if there was some other players around, we'd be passing a first player token around. And starting with the first player and going clockwise, everyone has a chance to engage one enemy from the staging area. Now, why would you want to engage an enemy? Well, the reason you want to do that is because of the enemy's threat value. If we engage an enemy, the enemy is now going to be attacking us, and we're going to be able to fight back, and we'll have to defend against its attacks. But that enemy is no longer in the staging area, and it will no longer be contributing to the overall threat value of the enemies in the staging area. So if we were to engage this Goblin Taskmaster, we would not have to worry about this 2 threat value here. We could just go ahead and quest, and we wouldn't have to subtract 2 from our overall willpower when we look at the amount of progress tokens we place on the quest card. So that's why you'd want to do it. Why you wouldn't want to do it is because the enemy would then be fighting you, and he'd be able to deal damage to you, and you'd have to have people who are able to block his attacks and then attack him back. Because everyone's exhausted, they're not actually going to be able to block or attack. Now, Sam does have a special ability that says, after you engage an enemy with higher engagement costs than your threat, ready Sam Gamgee, he gets +1 to willpower, attack, and defense until the end of the round. So he would be able to ready and then either attack or defend against that enemy. But I don't think I want to engage any enemies right now, so we'll move on to the next step, which is engagement checks. So now, each enemy is going to make an engagement check, and it's going to function the same way as the ambush checks did, where we're just going to compare our threat to their engagement costs. And still, our threat's 21, and their costs are 27 and then 34 respectively, so they're not going to engage us, which is good. So we can just go on, not have to worry about them attacking us, which is good. So they're just going to stay there in the staging area for now, and we're going to move on to the combat phase, which has several different steps here. First, we have the deal shadow cards step, resolve enemy attacks, and resolve player attacks. This whole phase, actually, I'm just going to skip because I don't have anyone engaged with me. If I did, they would get shadow cards, they would attack me, and then I'd be able to attack them. And I will explain how all that works later on, and it is a very big part of the game, but there's no one engaged with me, so I am just going to ignore it for now because there's no necessary fighting right now. Finally, there's going to be the refresh phase. So during this phase, we're first going to ready all of our cards. So if we had any exhausted cards, we will ready them. All of our heroes and allies are all able to be used again, which is great. Then, well, what's not so great is we're going to increase our threat. So each turn our threat's going to go up by 1, and so now our threat is 22. Okay, and then finally we're going to pass the first player token. Like I said, we're the only player in the game, so we pass it from ourselves back to ourselves. So the token's not even on the table. Alright, so that's the first round, and that was actually a really good round. We were able to play a Hobbit Cloak and then place 7 progress tokens on the quest card. That's not going to be happening every turn, I guarantee. Things may end up going downhill, but that was a great start. So now we can just go back on to the resource phase. We'll gain 1 resource to each of our heroes' pools. We'll draw a card. Oh, I like this card. Okay, so this is Halfling Determination, and it costs 1 red resource, and has an ability that says choose a Hobbit character. Now, all of our characters except for Arwen are Hobbits, so that's cool. That character gets +2 willpower, attack, and defense until the end of the phase. So this is a nice buff to one of our Hobbits if there's a tough enemy we need to defeat, or if we just want to get a couple extra progress tokens on the quest card. This is a very versatile card, very useful. Okay, so now we have several resources out there. So I actually do have enough resources to play Gandalf, so if I wanted to, I could play Gandalf, and that could be very good. So, as you can see here, Gandalf costs 5 resources, which is a lot, but he is a neutral card, so any hero can pay for it, which is good. Then, he has a value of 4 in all of his stats, so 4 willpower, 4 attack, 4 defense, and 4 hit points. He's very powerful, but at the end of the round, you must discard Gandalf from play. So that's one thing. He's gonna, he's Gandalf. He has other things to worry about. He's not going to be able to just help us escort Arwen to Rivendell. He has other things he needs to deal with. So he's just going to be around for 1 turn, and then he's going to be moving on to something else that demands his attention. But he does also have this responsibility that says, after Gandalf enters play, choose 1. Draw 3 cards. Deal 4 damage to 1 enemy in play, or reduce your threat by 5. Now, all of those are super powerful, and it makes Gandalf a really fun card to play. You get to do something awesome when you play him, and then he's going to be able to do something really cool, such as attacking an enemy, trying to take down a big boss or something like that. He's really good for that. He can block a really powerful attack from an enemy, or he can potentially place 4 more progress tokens on location. Any one of those options is fantastic. Gandalf is just a really good card. I actually do have a lot of resources, so I could even play this card right here, which costs 3 blue, and Frodo does have 3 blue resources, so I would be able to play this card. It says reduce 1 player's threat by 6, or reduce each player's threat by 2. Now, in a 1-player game, you're obviously just going to want to do the first option, and it would reduce my threat by 6, which is also, that's really good. So that's something that'd be cool to play. Taste it again. It says after here, you control defense and attack made by an enemy with engagement cost higher than your threat. Ready that hero. Until the end of the phase, that hero gets plus your attack while attacking that enemy. So that's cool. You can block and then attack that enemy back. This card right here, you can play it and it'll prevent an enemy from attacking, which is great. And then a Test of Will, 2 of these, and it has a response. It says cancel the when revealed effect of a card that was just revealed from the encounter deck. So this is going to be great. A lot of cards from the encounter deck have when revealed effects. They'll say nasty things like when revealed, each hero you control loses 3 resources, which is a card that is in this deck. That's a horrible card. But if you play this card, you can just get rid of it. Which is just completely ignore that ability. It's really nice, and I end up putting this in a lot of my decks. Just because it's so nice. Whenever I'm using a blue hero, chances are I'm going to be using this card. And then I already read this card, but this is very powerful, and it's something that I may consider doing. Okay, so I have... Alright, so actually, while I'm reading abilities, I actually haven't read Mary's ability yet, and he's pretty cool. He's going to be my main attacker throughout this game. So he has 0 attack, but he has an ability that says, Mary gets +1 attack for each Hobbit hero you control. Now, I have 3 Hobbit heroes, so he has 3 attack, which is great. Then, as a response, after Mary participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, ready another character that participated in that attack. So, if you have 2 people that attack an enemy, and they kill him, then the other hero can, and then the other character can just ready themselves and attack another enemy, which is really cool. Now, Armin does actually have a point little rule down here in bold. It says, that says if she leaves play, that the players are defeated. So, you know, we're trying to escort Arwen. If she's defeated, we just lose the game. So that's something we would like to avoid happening. Okay, and also, just real quick, Arwen is going to be under the control of whoever has the first player token. So in solo game, I just have it for the full game. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and play Gandalf. So I'm going to use 1 resource from Sam's pool, 2 from Mary's, and then 2 from Frodo's. So I'll be 5 resources, and I will play Gandalf. So I'm going to be able to choose one of these 3 options. I can draw 3 cards, deal 4 damage to 1 enemy in play, or reduce my threat by 3. I'm going to go ahead and draw 3 cards because that's kind of my deck's main weakness. I'm not really able to draw too many cards, so I'm going to take this opportunity to draw 3 additional cards. First, we have this ring mail here. It says, attached to a dwarf or hobbit character, restricted. Hero cannot have any more than 2 restricted cards. Then it says, attached character gets +1 hit point and 1 defense. So that's really nice. Then we have Skinbark. I really was hoping I would get him soon because he's really nice. He costs 3. No willpower, but 4 attack. That's crazy for an ally. And, well, really, that's crazy for a hero in general, too. Then he has 2 defense, 3 hit points. So he cannot have restricted attachments. You can't give him, like, a sword or a chainmail or something like that, which makes sense, because he's, an ent. And then he enters play exhausted. So, most cards, you just play it, and they're able to do something right away. He enters play exhausted, so he's gonna have to sit there for a whole turn without doing anything. Which makes sense, because the ents are slow to decide on doing anything, so makes sense from a thematic standpoint. And then, while Skinbark is attacking alone against an orc enemy, that enemy does not count its defense. So again, I haven't really explained how combat works, but that's a really nice ability. Alright, finally, we have the Veteran Axehand. He's a weaker unit, but he does have 2 attack, which is nice. He only costs 2, and he does have 2 health points and 1 defense. No willpower, but he's a nice little guy you can have on your side to help you out. And so that's going to be really nice. So we have these 3 cards. I'm just going to add these to my hand, and I'm going to reorganize it. Actually, that works. Okay, so now I have quite a few cards in my hand that I'm going to be able to use. And then I'm going to go ahead and exhaust my characters to commit them to quests. I think that my current plan, I'm going to see what comes out of the encounter deck, of course, but my current plan is to quest with all my characters except for Gandalf, and I'm going to engage this Goblin Taskmaster, and then Gandalf will kill him. That's my plan. We'll see if that happens. So I'm going to exhaust Arwen, Frodo, Mary, and Sam. And then I'm going to add 1 resource to Mary's pool because I'm planning on potentially playing this Feint card in order to block the Goblin's attack. Again, maybe I will change my mind, but that's what I'm planning on doing right now. Okay, so then I have my, So I still have 9 willpower. That didn't go up or down or anything like that, so I'm generating 9 willpower, which is a lot. And I'm going to go ahead, move this out of the way, and draw a card. Okay, so this is Sleeping Sentry. That's never a good thing to have Sleeping Sentry. So this is a treachery card that says, when revealed, deal 1 damage to each exhausted character. Then exhaust all ready characters. So that would deal 1 damage to all of my characters and then exhaust Gandalf. Oh man, I really don't want that to happen, so I'm going to play a Test of Will. So I'm going to spend 1 resource from Frodo's pool, and I'm going to cancel this 1 revealed effect. So this card's essentially blank, and then since it's a treachery card, after resolving that effect, it's just going to be discarded. When I was preparing for this video, I was playing through the scenario earlier, and that was the first card that came up during the game as the quest card setup instructions. So my first turn was me doing nothing because all my characters were exhausted. So that card's a nasty card to have, and I'm glad I was able to avoid that. Then the enemy's threat value is still 2, and my 9 willpower definitely does beat out their 2 threat, so I'm going to place another 7 progress tokens on the location. Alright, so I'm actually going to move the progress tokens up here so that I can just organize them a little bit better. Just above the card here, put them in rows of 5. Okay, so in total we have 14, 7 from last turn and 7 from this turn. So we just need 6 more, so 1 more turn like this, and even a little bit worse than this actually, and then we'll be done with this first quest card, which is nice. So then we'll do the travel phase. Now nothing's going to happen here because there's still no locations, and then we're going to optional engagements, and I'm going to optionally engage this Goblin Taskmaster. So after the Goblin Taskmaster engages a player, has a forced ability that says we must do 2 damage to 1 character I control. So you'll deal 2 damage to Gandalf. Now, one important distinction is between heroes, allies, and characters. So heroes are, my Sam, Merry, and Frodo, and they are able to gain resources, and cards that apply to heroes are able to apply to them. Other cards like Gandalf other cards, such as Gandalf, are ally cards. They are different. Different cards that apply to allies do not apply to heroes, and vice versa. So if a card said you can attach this equipment card to a hero, you cannot attach it to Gandalf, because he's an ally. Characters is the collective term for your heroes and allies. So this says deal 2 damage to a character, so I can deal 2 damage to one of my heroes or an ally. Now, I'm going to do it to Gandalf because he's 4 hit points. And also he's going to be discarded at the end of the turn anyway, so that damage is not really going to have any lasting consequences. So, just 2 damage to Gandalf, and then we're actually going to do some combat here. So, go to the combat phase. And so now, actually, before going to the combat phase, being a little bit ahead of myself, we do actually need to make all of the engagement checks for the leftover enemies inside the staging area, which is just the Wild Bear. He has 34 engagement cost. His engagement cost is 34. My friend's 22, so he doesn't engage me. So now we can go on to the combat phase. The first thing we're going to do is deal shadow cards. So we are going to take 1 card from the encounter deck and place it by each of the enemies that's engaged with me. And this card, and these cards might potentially do something. When we reveal it, most cards, such as this Wild Bear, when you reveal it, it wouldn't do anything. But certain cards, such as the Sleeping Sentry card, will have a shadow effect. And it's divided with this black border here, so when you reveal a card as a shadow effect, you're only going to do effects below the black border. So it says, defending player must discard all exhausted characters he controls. So, wow. This would be horrible if you had revealed this card as a shadow card. Yeah, all of our guys would just die. Which, that's really bad. And so I really hope that I don't reveal that card as a shadow card, but again, there are special abilities that can cancel shadow cards. But wow, that's really bad. Like, if you draw that card as a shadow card, you may just want to start over. That's really bad. And then we dump this shadow card, so now we're going to resolve enemy attacks. So when an enemy attacks, they are going to deal damage to a hero equal to their attack, which is going to be 2. And then you're also going to reveal the shadow card and apply any applicable shadow effects. Now, you are able to block attacks. So when you want to block an attack, you can exhaust a character to have them defend and block that attack, and then they will receive all of the damage from the attack subtracted by their defense value. So with attacks, this goblin is going to be doing 2 damage to a hero of your choice, but if you exhaust a hero or an ally, instead all the damage is going to be dealt to them minus their defense. So if I leave this attack undefended, and I will just have to deal 2 damage to one of my heroes, and they won't get to apply their defense, which is really bad. Alternatively, I could defend against this attack with a character, and then I would be able to avoid some of the damage because of my defense stat. And also, that is a way that allies can take the damage instead of heroes. Okay, so before I resolve any attacks, I did forget to resolve Sam's ability here, which says, after you engage an enemy with a higher engagement cost than your threat, ready Sam Gamgee, he gets +1 to his willpower, attack, and defense until the end of the round. So Sam is all ready for action. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and play this Fang card right here. We're going to pay 1 resource from Mary's pool, and then I'm going to choose an enemy engaged with the player. That enemy cannot attack that player this phase. So I'm going to choose the Goblin Taskmaster, and then he is just going to go ahead and return this card back to the encounter deck, and he's not going to be attacking me. But let's just say the enemy was attacking me. I'll take this Sleeping Sentry card from the discard pile as an example. If he were to attack me and I would not block, then I reveal this card, apply the shadow effect, and then he would do 2 damage to one of my heroes. And so that would be bad, and I wouldn't get to apply my defense value. If instead I wanted to defend, I could exhaust a character, such as Gandalf, and then the shadow card is revealed, the nasty effect happens, and then he does 2 damage to me minus Gandalf's defense, which is 4. So no damage, which is great. But I prevented him from attacking by playing my card, so now we're actually going to be able to move on to the next phase, which is resolve player attacks. So we've resolved the enemy attack, but he actually wasn't able to do it, so that's finished. Now we're going to resolve player attacks. So now we're in this phase, we can exhaust any number of our characters to have them attack different enemies. Now each enemy can receive 1 attack per turn, but you can have multiple people attack the same enemy as one collective attack. So I couldn't attack with Gandalf and attack with Sam separately, but I could attack with them together. And that matters for certain card effects. So I'm going to go ahead and exhaust Gandalf, and then exhaust Sam, and then we're going to deal damage to the Goblin Taskmaster equal to their collective strength. So Gandalf has 4 attack strength, Sam has 1 plus 1 because of his ability, so 2. So total, we're going to do 6 damage to the Goblin minus his defense. Now, the annoying thing with enemies is that they always apply their defense. For players, it's costly to use your defense. You must exhaust a character, and they can't do anything else that turn in order to use your defense. But enemies, they have their defense as an automatic thing that they're just able to do for free. So we did 6 damage to him, but he blocks the first 2 damage, and then the remaining damage after defense is dealt to him as damage counters. And luckily, we've dealt 4 damage to him, and his health is only 4. So he's dead, and that's exactly what I was planning on happening, so that is good. So now we can just return those. We didn't really need them in the first place. And so now we've taken care of that goblin, and now he's not going to be contributing his threat to the enemy's total threat value when requesting. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the ready things. Ready all of our characters and attachments and everything like that. We're going to increase our threat, and we would normally pass the first player token, and then that's going to be the end of the round. Now, unfortunately, Gandalf helped us a lot, but he's now going to have to leave. So it's the end of the round, so we're going to have to discard him from play, and he's going to go somewhere else in Middle-earth and help someone else do what needs to get done. Okay, so that is where I'm going to end this playthrough. And next time, I'm going to pick it up, and hopefully I'll be able to go through the rest of the phases of this quest. And like usual in all my playthroughs, I'll be able to speed up in the second part. The first part was really just a lot of teaching the game, but for the second part, I'll be able to really get into the action and hopefully win this game. I've been losing a lot of games lately, so hopefully I'm able to beat this one. So I'm really looking forward to doing that second part of this playthrough, but In the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you to see this game, just a little bit of instruction on how the game plays, the different phases of the game, and watch me play through part of the game. You all will like this video and subscribe to MalStorm Gaming and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified whenever I upload the second part of the playthrough and then any other future videos that I do. And in the meantime, happy gaming!